So the city of San Antonio ended up hiring the oldest law firm in the state of Texas, and the attorney that was representing him was considered to be one of the top lawyers in the entire southern United States. So, needless to say that every time I would try to get it into court in Comal County, there was always a reset, and then he filed a motion to dismiss. But it got to the point where he was actually affecting the court, where the court clerks weren't accepting my filings online. I'd do an e-file on a document, and it would be rejected, and I would have to go into town to file it physically, personally at the clerk's office. And then I found out he was communicating with the judge with emails. So yeah, a lot of hinky things going on. So I ended up non-suiting my case and taking it to federal court. And I thought federal court, at least I would have a fair chance. Boy, was I wrong. It was even worse in federal court than it was in state court. At least state court I had somewhat of a chance, but in federal court I had no chance whatsoever. They were against me the whole time. And you know, I understand now, because it's their program, it's their baby, it's their smart meter system, their grid system, and they want to make sure it goes through, and they don't want anybody to stop it, interrupt it, prevent it, sue for it, you know. So, needless to say, my case was dismissed, and it was dismissed with prejudice. I filed the appeal. The appellate court denied it, and dismissed my appeal, and stated that I failed to comply, or I failed to meet the requirements for filing the appeal. This is all a bunch of bullshit. So I refiled in federal court, and the second time I had all the documents done correctly. The judge, the magistrate motioned for, or I actually made a motion for a court-appointed attorney. They kept denying me, and I had the magistrate had demanded that I redo, or that I submit a document that lays out the particulars of the actual timeline of what happened, and all the stuff that's done during discovery, which is after the initial pleading. Because the initial pleading, all that is they just need limited information to set the case, or to set the claim, to show that there is a claim that relief could be granted for. So when I did that, and met every single part of the statute requirement of the rules of civil procedure, for federal rules of civil procedure, and the judge ordered me to submit this document, which was then part of discovery, and that she just made a ruling that discovery wouldn't start until after she determined that she had jurisdiction to hear the case to begin with. And so when I resubmitted the complaint, perfect as it should be, they threw it out. They threw out the complaint, saying that it wasn't the document that was requested. Well, of course they're going to throw it out. It was perfect. That was the case in and of itself, and it met every single statute requirement for it to be a federal case. And of course they're going to throw it out, because if they leave it in the record, then it proves that they're screwing people. So they threw it out and claimed that I failed to follow the judge's order, so they're dismissing my case, and that they're finding me a vexatious litigant, and that my suit was frivolous. So I'm a frivolous, vexatious litigant, and I'm prevented from any future filings in the federal court system whatsoever, unless I get prior written approval from the judge, from a federal judge. So, or from that judge that heard, or that labeled me a vexatious litigant. You know, and you know, a vexatious litigant is somebody who has a case dismissed, and they refile it over and over and over again in different places, trying to get it adjudicated. And it's already res judicata, meaning it's already been determined. You can't go back and refile on it. So they labeled me, and it's got to be 5 times. They set a standard. The standard is usually 5 times or more a person who's trying to bring up the same issue over and over and over and over again. Me, I only brought it up twice. And the second time, I'm labeled a vexatious litigant. So I didn't even meet the standard for vexatious litigant and been labeled one by the federal courts. So when the federal court labels you a vexatious litigant, and the judge that is appointed into the criminal court where you're being taken on false charges, and the judge appointed by the governor, who you sued, the governor you sued, and lost because they had another judge come in and take that judge's place and say that the governor has sovereign immunity. The attorney general has sovereign immunity. He can't be sued. So I'm dismissing your case. And this is from a guy who's not a judge. He's a comptroller. Came into the county, took my judge out. He sat in, made the ruling, dismissed my case, and then left. Went back to Austin. In 35 years, he was a retired comptroller for the state of Texas. Not even a judge. A retired comptroller. A tax man. Okay? So, he's going to dismiss my case. And then the federal gets dismissed, and now I'm being false charged in Bexar County, impersonation of a public servant as a volunteer fireman, and it's a felony. And the judge that's brought in 2 weeks before my court hearing, and they know where I'm going to be, they know what my court date is because I've already been in jail, in custody, they set it, everything, what court I'm going into. Well, they take the judge out of there. He's only been in office 2 years on a 4-year term. His first term, for his first 4 years, he's going to leave his second year in, claiming, well, we don't know why he left. He just retired, supposedly. Now, granted, the guy had been practicing law since 1970s, 77. So, retirement, yeah, probably. But it's just find it very odd that now that I'm in I'm in a courtroom, and out of all the district courts in Bexar County, I think there's 18 of them, I'm taking to the one where the judge is, the voted judge is no longer there, and they're bringing in a judge who's appointed by the governor, who used to be the attorney general that I tried to get my money back that was stolen from me. So, and I'm sure nobody else had sued the attorney general, who's now our governor, Greg Abbott, trying to recover their money as an individual. I'm sure he never had anybody sue them but me. Okay? So they know who I am, and when it was determined that here I come into their criminal system, they're going to put me in the court where the judge is appointed by Mr. Abbott, and turns out that the judge ended up violating the statutes. I proved beyond a shadow of doubt, but beyond reasonable doubt, that I'm a properly registered volunteer fire department. I'm a volunteer fireman with the fire department because I'm a member. I'm a CEO and the president of the association. So, and it's going to say that the Texas Government Code Statute 419.017, which is the Texas Commission on Fire Protection, states in that particular code that the voluntary program for volunteer fire departments to be certified, if they so choose, it's voluntary, under this statute, and these are the guidelines laid out for it, that we will give them a certification program, that the certifications are just as equal as to the full-time firefighters, but will allow extra stuff for time to complete it, and just extra things other than the other program had. But it'll be the exact same certification just for volunteer firemen. But it's voluntary, unless you're full-time paid, or you have a contract with a government agency like a county or city to provide fire protection services, which I have neither. I get no pay, and I'm not under contract with the county or the city. So I'm not required under that state code to be registered or certified by the Texas Commission on Fire Protection. It's a strictly voluntary program. And that's the whole point that the legislature of the last few sessions has been trying to get to, where they make it mandatory for volunteer firemen to be certified. But with 80% of the firemen in the state of Texas being volunteers, they can't get it done because they'll lose too many volunteer firemen who either they're not going to go to school for the 100 and some odd hours, they're not going to pay the outrageous price for the courses or the certification, and they're just not doing it. They don't have the time. They're volunteers. I mean, come on. So it's not like this is their full-time job. It's not. So when he takes that code and says that that's the definition now of a volunteer fire department, a volunteer fireman is someone registered and certified under that code, the voluntary code, that I am definitely, since I'm not certified through that code, that I'm not a volunteer fireman. Therefore, I couldn't have been responding as a first responder to an emergency 911 call, so I was definitely impersonating a public servant. And then I cited the Texas Penal Code 1.07, at the very beginning of the Penal Code. There's a section called Definitions that defines all the different terms for the Penal Code. And number 43 is the term for public servant. And chapter 43, or no, subparagraph 43, subparagraph G, letter G, states a person performing an act of government as a matter of right, even though not legally authorized to be doing it, is still considered a public servant in Texas. So because I have a certification issued by a municipality, the city of New Braunfels, which is a subdivision of the state, there's the government code that provides me the ability to respond to emergencies for what I'm trained to, and that's on my certification from that subdivision. So that's my right. That's my right to respond, just strictly provide the services that I'm trained for and certified for under that certification. And that's it. I can't do anything else. That's all I'm authorized to, which is what I was doing. I was providing those services. So, and then even if I'm not legally authorized to be doing it, right? They say, well, I may have the certification, and yeah, well, our government code says that, but you're still not a emergency medical technician who's certified, whatever. You can't be responding. It's not legally entitled to. Well, if that's the case, then the law says I'm still considered a public servant. But no, he's going to find me guilty of impersonating a public servant, convict me of a felony, take away my voting rights, take away my constitutional Second Amendment rights, make me go and report, take a seize the DNA sample from me the very first day, before anything else was done. The very first thing they did is take me in there and swab both sides of my mouth trying to get my DNA, hoping, just beyond hope that I've got something else in my past that I'm going to get caught for. I'm not worried about that. Never did anything. So, yeah, welcome to the corrupt government of Texas. Our governor's corrupt, the judicial system's corrupt, our cities are corrupt, everybody's corrupt. And the ones that aren't corrupt become corrupted. Otherwise, they're gotten rid of because they're not corrupt. They can't handle real people in with them that aren't corrupt because it just won't work for them. So they get them out. Or the people can't work in that environment, see what's going on to the average person, and just don't want to live with that on their heart, so they leave. So I filed the rehearing, requesting for him to reconsider, and stating that obviously he misunderstood my position and my pleading for my defense. But then I stated, well, wait a second, it's not my job to defend myself. It's my job for the prosecution to prove that I'm guilty under the elements of the charge on the indictment. And the charge on the indictment was, A, I reported to be an emergency medical technician, an EMT, which is certified in the state of Texas, Health and Human Services. And B, I'm a first responder. And C, that I was operating my vehicle with emergency lights and sirens when I was legally not allowed to. Okay? So they couldn't prove two of those. Didn't even enter any evidence whatsoever that I was saying that I was an emergency medical technician or reported to be one that is not certified. No evidence whatsoever to prove that part of the element of the charge that was the case. Everything came down to I'm not a volunteer fireman under that code, so therefore I'm guilty. And as far as the lights and sirens go, I was authorized under the Texas Vehicle Code because the volunteer fire department is allowed to have lights and sirens. It's just in there. It's in the law. So they couldn't disprove the EMT. I mean, they couldn't prove the EMT. They couldn't prove the lights and siren. The only testimony they had was the sheriff got up that I subpoenaed in for as my witness. They put him on the stand first as his witness for the prosecution, and he questioned him as if he was his witness. But it's irrelevant. It never came up that I was an EMT or that I was being charged with being an EMT, and that they proved that I said I was an EMT and that I was licensed by the state of Texas, which isn't the case. That would be the impersonation. But that was never proven. And it was the main element of the charge was specifically that I said I was an EMT certified in the state of Texas responding to an emergency with lights and siren. And they're tasked to prove those beyond a reasonable doubt for conviction. If any of the elements are lacking or missing or they're not proven, it's an automatic acquittal. So they never proved the EMT issue. They never proved the lights and siren. I had the city ticket dismissed from the airport stop for the lights and siren at the municipal court. The city attorney dismissed it when I showed him the law. The volunteer fire departments had my paper showing that I'm a volunteer fire department and registered Comal County, and that under the government codes, that I'm legitimate, basically. I got my tax documents, got my 501c3 from the federal government, and that's all you need to be the volunteer fire department. You got to be a nonprofit, got to be tax-free, tax-exempt by the state. The state's got to order you, give you the certificate that you're state exempt from the taxes, and you got to be federally exempt under the 501c3. So all of those things combined, then, and you're operating as a public safety organization, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're providing the service in the community, you're a volunteer fire department. Well, you see, the judge didn't like that. He said, so what, anybody can be a volunteer fire department? I can go get on a uniform and badge and file these papers and go out and start collecting money from people and do whatever I want? And he said, I just don't think that's right. It doesn't matter if it's right or not. You think it's right. It's matter what the legislature said, and the legislature said that I do these things, and I'm a volunteer fire department, and I've done those things, I'm a volunteer fire department. And I don't care if you like it or not, Judge. You're not the legislature. If you are, then get elected, and your representatives will elect you, and you go down to the court, to the Capitol, and you pass the laws and get them changed. Okay? But you can't do it on bench, which is what you did. So, yeah, he basically reversed the law and said that I'm mandatory to be certified and registered under the government code 419.017. Yeah, 419.071, which is subchapter D of the Texas Commission on Fire Protection. Specifically outlines the volunteer fire department's regulations and requirements in the state of Texas, and there aren't that many unless you're registered, unless you're required to be certified by them or regulated by them, or you volunteer. You can volunteer to be regulated by them, and if they accept you, in other words, they see your department and they want to regulate you, yeah, they'll do it. But that's the only way you're required to as a volunteer fire department. Now, the judge says, no, I'm going to make it mandatory, and I'm going to go ahead and do what the legislature's been unable to do for the last few sessions and make it mandatory for you to be certified. Otherwise, you're not a volunteer fire department or a volunteer fireman, and I'm going to find you guilty of a felony, and I'm going to convict you on it, which is what he did. And would not do the rehearing. He denied it. I filed it on the 10th. He denied it on the 10th. And he's on his way out. He's no longer in the courtroom. He's gone. He didn't win re-election. He lost his runoff, and the Democrat had been voted into the office as the new judge anyways in that court. So the Republicans lost. He was a Republican. And, yeah. But, I really don't think he cared. I think he knew he was on his way out. He knew he was leaving. So I think he just figured, I'll just go ahead and do what I want to. Ain't nobody going to stop me. So, but either that or, like I said, it's kind of strange that my governor has been involved in a lot of these things against me. A lot, every single one, basically, actually, except for the federal CPS for the city. But then the Judge Contreras, who the judge that just found me guilty, was the federal prosecutor, assistant federal prosecutor for the federal government in San Antonio while my case was going through the federal courts. So he would have known all about it. How many people are suing the city of San Antonio for $10 million for their smart meters that almost killed them? So the name is very familiar. They know who I am. They know what I'm, he knew who I was. I didn't know him. I found out about him last night. I found out that, yeah, he was in the federal court system the whole time that I'm being shut down and denied my recovery on my harm and damages, and all the money I've lost because now I'm not producing any power on the grid. So all that money I invested, it's my return on investment, which is going to take me 12 years to recoup my $30,000 invested for my solar array, is going to take me, well, the rest of my life, if I live that long, to recover the money that I paid, because I'm not able to recoup my investment or return on my investment from the solar array. I mean, from the power company who would be buying my power. So all I know is I ain't got to pay them. I don't have a smart meter in my house, so I'm not getting sick anymore from it. They can't control my devices anymore with the smart meter. They can't have that access into my home with the smart meter anymore. So, yeah, I'm real happy. There's places in this country where people are being thrown off of their property because they're refusing solar or smart meters. They're not allowed to live off grid. I live off grid. I'm fortunate enough. Or they're finding people and making them pay for using the sun. You know, what the hell is that about? You know, really? I mean, really? But that's what it's coming to in this country. This country is so graft and corrupt. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, our president, Donald Trump, brother, he can't drain that swamp. The swamp's too big, too deep, too full of swamp creatures. He can't drain the swamp. He ain't even going to try to empty the swamp. You know what? If anything, he's part of the swamp. All right? Because let me tell you, I don't care what kind of line they're feeding us or what kind of story he wants to sell us. He is just as corrupt as all the rest of them. Okay? They wouldn't put him into office and let him get into office. That's what that was all about. He was put into office. He was led into office because in this country there are ways to prevent people from getting into office. We saw it with Bernie Sanders, what they did to him. Come on. All right? They put in there who they want in there, when they want in there, and that's how they get in there. So we live in a society like that where corrupt people and corrupt politicians, and you know, it's just the way it is. So don't expect the world to be fair and be balanced, because it ain't. It ain't. But when injustices happen to you, like what's happened to me, you got to stand up and you got to say something, so everybody else is made aware of it. Because at least it may not change it, but at least it's out there and everybody knows it, and they can't say, "Hey, we didn't know that was going on." So when things really turn to shit in this country, and they will, because we're going to let them. The people are not standing up for their rights. We're not taking command of our destiny. We're not taking our control of what's going on, and we're letting these things happen to us because we figure we have no control, or there's just people out there who just don't believe it's actually happening. I mean, there are some dumbed down people in this country. They're smart people, don't get me wrong. They're just dumbed down, and it's not their fault. They've been programmed that way. They've been led that way. They've been treated that way. So, as for the rest of us, we're just trying to make it as best we can. We know something's coming. We don't know when. We don't know how. We know it's coming. It's going to happen. Excuse me. Yeah, sinuses. It's that time of the year around Christmas and the holidays. I always get drainage real bad in my sinuses. And, you know.